part of the process of taking charge of our outcomes is to become more in tune or aware of how we manage our intention. I like to think of it as stilling the brain, because when we quiet it down, we then have access. I know when I want a really profound or complicated answer to something, I have a routine that I do. When I quiet myself, I can connect to answers that are not connected in the traditional way to reality.
Do you believe that's accessing the information field?
100%, absolutely. Now, remember, the information field is operating based on Lebet's and Feinstein's work. The way I view it, people can disagree with me. Reality is happening up to a half a second before I'm aware of it. And what I have is the ability to tap into the information field, which connects me closer to the moments of now, real moments of now, and have then greater influence over determining my outcomes.
That's very interesting. So you're saying the average person takes up to 2 seconds to respond to a stimulus, like our brain takes those 2 seconds to process, or our body takes that to react. But when you connect with the information field, when you are within that river of the Tao, within that way of being aligned, you are already reacting faster than somebody who is taking those 2 seconds to process. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am. I'm saying that I actually have a couple of demonstrations that I can do in a group. I can't do it here in this, that demonstrate that ordinarily you can't do something, and that if you can still the brain, and normally I can shift into it. It takes me about 3 to 5 seconds, and I can demonstrate that I can do something another person can't do because of the mind chatter, all of the stuff going on in the brain. If you took a dollar bill and you held the dollar bill and you put your hands like this over the face of it. Sorry, I don't have one here. I would actually do it. You put your hands over the top of it like that and you drop it. By the time you react and do it, the bill's already passed. You can't do it. But if you can quiet the mind and still it, you drop it, you are able to be 100% so you can catch it.
You're in sync. It's like the Olympic athletes or anybody who wants to perform at a high level. They visualize their routine before they do it. They still the mind and they go to that place of visualizing and trying to get
knowing.
The knowing. Yeah, it's deeper, and it requires to get rid of, like you said, get rid of that mind chatter. It's
I use it as
peak performance, right?
Yeah, I use that as an example of demonstrating knowing versus thinking.
What would you say an argument to someone who says, "Oh, that's instinct," or it is practiced, muscle memory, because you've done it for so often? I mean, if you were giving, this demonstration 100 times a year, you've done it 100 times, at least more than the person that you have on stage trying to catch the dollar bill. So what would you say to somebody who is saying something like that as an opposing theory?
That's a great question. How do I know that you're going to drop it? You're the one who drops it. I'm the one who catches it.
So you have the person dropping it.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, that does change.
Yeah.
I can't possibly know when you're going to drop it. It's not me dropping it. It's you dropping it. And in order to catch it, I have to know you're going to drop it before I know you're going to drop it.
Right.
You cannot catch it if you are thinking about it. And I can do it almost 100% of the time.
I'm gonna have to go practice that with my kids. You guys grab a dollar bill. We got to try this.
I'm gonna add that to my mindfulness classes.
I love it.
The interesting thing about it is that if I have other crap going on in my life, I can't do it. I have to get it out. I have to literally shut out all this crap going on, my thinking, my worrying, my stress, conflict, anything that's going on. Where's my car? I don't remember where it is. Whatever that happens to be my concern, and connect with you so that I am in 100% alignment with you the minute it happens.
I love this so much. So within Eastern philosophy, a large percentage of the way people do this, they would call this mindfulness. In mindfulness, the premise of mindfulness is that you are in the present moment of time. You are not distracted by what happened in the past.
Right.
You're not distracted by what's going to happen in the future. You are in the existence of right now. And one of the most frequent ways to develop mindfulness is meditation, because meditation is clearing your brain of all other distracting stimulus,
Completely
focusing
agree.
on the right now and the self, yourself right now. So stripping away in that bicameral mind vernacular, stripping away, I would call it the ego or the imposed mind, the thinking self that we think that we are, and coming to the true self, the higher self, or the pure core of who you are. And through constant and consistent meditation practice, people find that they can do things like this. I mean, you can take examples. Look at the Tibetan monks. They have had like hundreds of experiments, probably at the very least, on things that they can do out of pure intent of will that your regular human cannot even function. Insane things like withstanding extreme temperatures, withstanding insane amounts of pain, healing and regeneration very, very quickly, the precognition, all these things simply because of the present focus of right now, being aligned with that information field, being aligned with reality as it stands instead of their interpretation of what reality is as it stands.
I'd factor prayer into that as well. Real prayer,
Right.
not the one where you just get up and say what it was you were taught. Just not just a simple recital, but I mean real prayer, searching for, wanting to get information,
Right.
connect
Like
with
a
God.
yearning of the soul. Yeah.
Work. Yeah, prayer is work.
Prayer is
Mhm.
work. I always use the analogy of prayer being me talking at God and meditation being me receiving the answer from God. You know, you put that information out there, those questions, the deep yearning as the intention, and stilling yourself, getting to a point of that calm, that quiet, that focus is when you hear the answer back. That's when you get the information back.
I'll share an enlightenment that I had a while back. It was incredibly profound. I was just with somebody last night sharing this with her. She was kept asking, struggling with something really deep inside of her. And that what I discovered, you will never get an answer to the question why. Why is always the wrong question to be asking God about. Because what you're asking for is something to be reasonable, and principles and truth are not reasonable.
I think that denotes the filter of you're trying to fit it into your box instead of the understanding of the actual reality of the circumstance.
Yeah, try and make gravity reasonable. Why did you make me fall?
Yeah, it's
I don't
better
think it's
to ask
fair.
the questions, how can I work within these principles to be more successful, instead of why, like what now? What can I learn? How
Or
can I move
how
forward?
can I understand? That's
Yeah,
my
You know
general
what?
go-to.
that's a good question. I like that.
Look at in our own lives. Look at in our own personal lives. When a child does something wrong, we'll say, "Why did you do that?" Well, immediately that puts them on defensive. They got to come up with a
Yeah.
reason. We don't empower them by asking the question why. What we do is we force them to come up with a reason to explain it so they don't have to be responsible for it.
It's true.
A lot of the times they're not at the developmental place where they could tell you why. They don't have yeah, they're not going to be able to deliberate with us about
Yeah. As a questioner, this is deeply impactful for me.
that. So on the slide, it talks about ESP. We haven't talked about that yet. Intuition we've kind of touched on.
Let me tell you what I think the differences are. Precognition is the ability to anticipate something that is going to happen before it happens. Intuition is closer to a feeling
Knowing.
about a situation and more obscure. Almost every time I've gone counter to my intuition, I have made a mistake. Almost 100% of the time. But it wasn't always as clear as a precognition. ESP, extrasensory perception, is very often confused with intuition and precognition. I think we all have psychic ability. Jessica Utt said this. This was her view. I quote her quite a bit because I like her so much. She's just a solid mathematician. I mean, it's like hard to drift off with her into La La Land. She's very grounded. She compares this to music. She says it's like we all of us have an innate relationship to music, but not all of us are concert pianists. And some people
Right.
are born concert pianists, and some people practice it and practice it and practice it, become extremely good. And I'm one of those people who practiced it a little bit and realized I was never going to be good at it. So I was not willing to pay the price. But we all have the ability. It's like, I love music. I love listening to it. I love engaging in it. But that has nothing to do with me being able to go out and create a song. So we all have, we relate to it. Some people have it innately that are magical, and other people have to work at it. But we all have the skill to be able to develop.
Yeah. Some people have a talent for
The
it.
talent to develop it.
As
That's
someone
correct.
who practices all of these things, I would define them in a very similar way. I think psychic ability is a term that the mainstream world kind of uses as an umbrella for all of these. It's things that happen within the realm of the mind, the psyche, that contain or like overarch above the precognition, which is generally something that people see or experience instead of the knowing. So precognition, some people would use that to define deja vu or dreams or things like that will function in the realm of precognition, where you have a knowledge of something that's going to occur before it is going to happen. Intuition, I prefer the term intuition instead of psychic ability, because I believe they all fall under an intuitive realm of definition. It's something that isn't provable. It's not something that necessarily has a direct observable outcome until it occurs. Whereas ESP is defined as the way that it is facilitated. It's the way that it functions within your body. It's the sense of perception you have for it. And some people, just like you said, have more of an ability, the talent for it. But it doesn't mean that I have seen over and over and again people who've been able to develop it to some degree. So I entirely agree with you and Jessica that we're capable of it. All of us innately are capable of it. Some people are capable faster.
We've talked about that on the podcast before, is everybody has access to spiritual gifts, and we are encouraged to develop them, but we're not going to develop them if we don't have the desire. Obviously, we're not going to develop them if we don't think it's possible. If we say, oh, that's not my gift, like, my friend has that gift, but like she was born with it and it's not mine, so I guess it's not going to be available to me. We have to have the desire and the belief that it's possible to put in the work. And maybe like the concert pianist analogy, I'm going to put in the work and I'm not going to play as beautifully as somebody else, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to have the opportunity to play, and I'm not going to have experienced beautiful music. So it's worth putting in the work to have these experiences, because they're available to us. So why not, use the tools that are given to us? Why not check it out?
I personally think that this is my view. We all have the capacity to know, not only know, but to know everything that's important. And then I think what we have is everything else. So many of the problems that we have that we make important are because we believe them to be important, not because they are important. I think that, for example, my kids are important. I know that. I don't have to think about it. And if I had to choose between a meeting with you and a critical meeting with my children, I can tell you who's going to win, because I
won't be offended by that. No hard feelings.
I know what's important. So it's easy for me to choose between what it is that I think is important and what it is I know is important, because I've recognized the difference. I think that what we do, I think a lot of us, many, many, many people subordinate knowing to believing, because believing requires work. You have to put effort and energy into it. If you want to accept something as an idea that is true, you have to put work into it. It isn't something that you're just going to get. And I see this in religions generally. I see it in our culture, is that we make stuff important, and we believe it to be important, and that becomes more important than putting in the time and the effort and the energy to know.
Right.
On that note, I wanted to share another thought. Dean Radin is an incredibly real scientist who's worked extensively in this field and around it. Very real. He came out of Princeton University. He was curious about, is there a global consciousness? Do we have, kind of going to the place that you were going to earlier around, we're all connected? He put what he called eggs all around the planet. Started this in the late 90s. And these eggs, he called them eggs, which was just a term he made up. They to kind of like describe the electroencephalogram concept, but they were random numbers generators. So they would generate random numbers, and they all synced. And the idea was that a random numbers generator is, you take a coin and you toss it, you flip it, 50% of the time it's going to be heads, and 50% of the time it's going to be tails. And if you do it long enough, that absolutely is going to be the case. And that's what a random numbers generator does, is it generates numbers randomly like that over time. He had all of these eggs, which were random number generators, generating these numbers. And he wanted to see if there were globally things that impacted our global consciousness. And he called it the Global Consciousness Project. 9/11 came along. You can see the data online. That before the towers were hit, you could see a blip in the distortion. So what happened was, instead of the numbers being random, they suddenly started to stop being random. They started to be aligned, connected. So there was a variation from randomness, a significant variation from randomness. Then the towers were hit, and it just went off the chart. And then the next one came along, and it went off the chart. So his work was to show that there is a global consciousness that is affecting us, that we are affecting as a function of events that we engage in. In my model, that means that what's really happening is it's affecting this information field that we keep talking about. He also then did a study on prayer, where he had Buddhist monks bless and put their intention into seeds, to see if by their intention on the seeds made a difference. And he demonstrated clearly that the seeds that were where the Buddhist monks had put their intention on growing and being better and developing more, that they grew way better than the alternate ones that were not that way, which tells us that our intention in reality, if you accept that data, and it's hard to not accept the data, if you accept the data, it tells us that our intention and our focus and our commitment to things that work makes a huge difference on things working.
And it also proves that there is power in prayer. Maybe it's not just intention. Maybe it's also there's a unseen power that is contributing.
So I've heard you say before, Doug, that our intention literally shapes reality around us, like it attracts probability. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Okay, so the future exists in what are called states of probabilities.
Right.
And if you accept it, pretty much everything we've been talking about, and you recognize, and by the way, this is testable. That what I'm talking about is testable and verifiable. So if you say to yourself, okay, our intention is a manifestation of our consciousness observing an outcome and creating an event in reality. In my view, it is the act of observation expressed as intention causes the event that becomes reality.
One of the huge pushes of mindfulness, living an intentional life, if you will, is accomplishing and achieving things that otherwise would become impossible. And there's a whole science behind goals and growth and things that are behind that as well. But I have personally seen, there's a lot of attraction and a lot of manifestation that are really talked about right now. It's very popular to go this way, that putting the intention out there, setting the goal or the awareness of achieving something is going to bring that thing to you. And I think this goes right along with that. And you can say that even from a Christian perspective, we do this with prayer. Like we'll pray for something, we'll pray for an outcome. And if it goes beyond the passive, if we bring it into our awareness and we speak, not just speak, but if we go intend to accomplish that thing, it's more likely to happen. Whereas if we let it slide, we live basically an autonomous life. It's not a productive life. We never reach the mass capacity of our potential.
I just challenge people to say, how much time do you spend on focusing on the few things that are important to you versus the time that you spend on the things that are not important to you? if you really take the time to do it. I hold that it is because we lose clarity around the focus of what is important, and we give it up for the things that are not important, because fixing a problem that somebody else could have done makes me feel good. And you see this in families and children, and you know, the things that are truly important to us get neglected because of stuff that's not important. How many of the problems that we have in reality are we creating because we all agree with those are the problems we need to have?
Right. It gives a lot of hope, I think, looking at the world today. We're in what some people might consider a hopeless situation. There's a lot of, violence. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of problems in the world around us. But just today, having this conversation with you, I think really highlights human capacity, and that we do have the capacity to be creative, to interact and change the reality around us, and to do amazing things. That our biggest limiting factor seems to pretty much be ourselves and our understanding of the world. And so if we focus on the principles of what are, we question everything. I think that there is quite a lot of hope for humanity going forward.
I couldn't agree more. Going back to this business of knowing, if we put more effort and energy into our education systems and our relationships and our companies and our families about knowing rather than thinking, and we didn't just automatically make believing and thinking the center of everything that is life, it would have a huge impact, I think, on all of our outcomes.
I think in a lot of ways, science is catching up to a lot of the things that the human consciousness has known for a very long time. So we can just sit back and wait. I feel that very deeply. We learn. Humans have the capacity for learning as far as we can suspend that belief. And I find it really exciting. We're pushing the realm of possibility every year, every day in that field.
That was Jessica's point, is that parapsychology tells us what we don't know.
Exactly. Which is everything. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said before at the beginning, this is the fourth time we've had this conversation. So hopefully we covered all the important points. I've been really, really excited to be able to get this out to everyone, because I think it's important material, and it's stuff that can be proven and repeated and backed by modern science. We thank you for your time and for your expertise. You are the expert that we've picked. So we're gonna follow that.
Okay.
We'll probably see Doug again. We have some other things that we'd like to cover with him, maybe a little bit more in La La Land. So please stay tuned. Please subscribe or follow along. Leave us any questions and comments. We will see you next time. Thank you.